I didn't know it was happening. Not until it was too late. That's the thing about betrayal, right? You never see it coming. You never expect it. You think everything is fine until it's not. I was sitting at my desk, the glow of the computer screen lighting up the room, the sound of my own breathing filling the quiet apartment. It was late, but I hadn't been able to sleep. Work had been stressful, and I'd been pushing myself harder than usual. But tonight was different. I had this nagging feeling, a strange sense of restlessness that I couldn't shake. It's the kind of feeling that creeps up on you when you're alone, when there's nothing but your thoughts, and the clock ticking down the minutes. I didn't think anything of it at first, until I noticed something. The phone. It was vibrating on the counter across the room, the screen lighting up with a message. The name on the screen wasn't mine, and the message wasn't for me either. It was for her. Is he still there? It was an innocent enough question, right? But I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. This wasn't a message I recognized, and my heart skipped a beat. I didn't want to know, but curiosity pulled me in. I told myself I'd ignore it. I had no right to invade her privacy. We were married. There was trust between us. I believed that. But I couldn't stop staring at the message. My mind was running in circles, wondering who was texting her at this hour. I tried to focus on the work in front of me, but every time my eyes shifted toward the phone, my thoughts turned darker. A few minutes passed, and I heard the sound of keys jiggling in the lock. She was home. Eliza had been out with her friends for the past few hours, and as usual, she came back late. She was always like that, independent, free-spirited. I admired that about her, even if it sometimes left me feeling a little distant. But tonight felt different. I heard her footsteps approaching the bedroom, soft and rhythmic. She entered the room, her presence filling the space. I didn't say anything at first. I wasn't sure what to say. My mind was still on that text, on that question. Is he still there? I tried to act normal, tried to let go of the feeling that something wasn't right. Hey, how was the night? I asked, looking up from my screen. She smiled, a little too quickly, a little too brightly. It was great, she replied, her voice a little too light, too rehearsed. Just the girls, you know, catching up. I nodded, though I wasn't really listening anymore. My thoughts were elsewhere, still on that text. It was probably nothing, I told myself. Maybe just a harmless chat with one of her friends. But as she sat down next to me on the bed, I noticed something strange. Her phone, lying face up on the nightstand, was flashing with a new message. I could see the name. It was the same name as the one from earlier. The text that had made my stomach turn. I couldn't help it. My gaze lingered on the screen, the message still visible. He's gone now. I thought you'd want to know. The knot in my stomach tightened. I hadn't meant to look. I hadn't planned to invade her space like that. But the words were like a punch to the gut, and I didn't know what to do. The trust one thought we had was crumbling in front of me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Eliza, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Who's this? Her expression faltered for just a moment. It was so quick, so subtle, that I almost missed it. But I didn't. I saw it. I saw the shift. What? She asked, her voice suddenly defensive. I pointed to the phone, trying to keep my composure. This message. Who's texting you? She looked at the screen and then back at me, her eyes widening just a little too much. She reached for her phone, her fingers brushing against the screen, but I stopped her. Eliza, who is it? Her hands trembled slightly, just enough to give me pause. She let out a forced laugh, a nervous, shallow sound. It's nothing, just a friend from work. Why are you? I cut her off before she could finish. A friend? At this hour? She hesitated. For the first time in years, she hesitated. I could feel the distance between us growing in that moment. The quiet tension in the air, the unspoken truth hanging in the room like an elephant. I wanted to ask her, what was going on? What were you doing behind my back? Who is this guy? But I didn't. I stayed silent, too scared to hear the answer. You can trust me, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. It was hollow, almost as if she were trying to convince herself more than me. I didn't believe her. I couldn't. Something inside me knew that there was more to this than she was letting on. And in that moment, I felt like I was losing her. I was losing my grip on the reality I thought we shared. Then why won't you tell me who it is? I asked quietly. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned away, staring out the window, her back stiff, her shoulders tense. The silence between us was louder than any words could ever be. And that's when I realized I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I had uncovered something that would change everything. The silence in the room felt suffocating. I could hear my heartbeat echoing in my ears, pounding so loudly that I thought she might hear it too. Eliza was sitting there, staring out the window, her back to me. She hadn't said a word since I asked her who the message was from. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them hidden, clutching them tightly in her lap. It was like she was waiting for me to break the silence, to say something, anything, but I couldn't. My mouth was dry, and I felt like I was choking on the words I wanted to say. "Who is he, Eliza?" I finally asked again, my voice a little louder this time, tinged with frustration. My mind was racing, trying to piece everything together. That text, her behavior, the way she tried to brush it off, the look in her eyes when I asked. Everything about this moment screamed something isn't right. She turned slightly, her face partially illuminated by the dim light from the street lamp outside. "Eliza, please," I added, trying to soften my tone. I need to know." She stayed still for what felt like an eternity, but in reality, it was only a few seconds. She let out a deep sigh, her shoulders slumping in defeat. She slowly reached for her phone, the same phone that had triggered this entire whirlwind of doubt and confusion. Her hands were trembling as she swiped the screen, opening the message thread. She didn't look at me. She just stared at her phone, her fingers slowly scrolling through the texts. The silence grew heavier, and I felt like I was being suffocated by it. I could see the messages clearly now, not just the one that had sent a cold wave of fear through me earlier, but the entire conversation. It was a string of texts that made my stomach churn. The messages were from a name I didn't recognize, someone I had never heard her mention before. At first glance, the messages seemed innocuous, casual, harmless. But as I read further, I realized how wrong I was. The conversation started innocently enough, with small talk about work, about her day, about the usual stuff. But then there was a shift. A subtle shift, but a shift nonetheless. The messages became more personal, more flirtatious. I could feel my breath catch in my throat as I read the words. "I can't stop thinking about you. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing on my mind before I fall asleep. You make everything feel so effortless. I wish you were here right now. I'll make it worth your while. Just give me a chance to show you what it could be like." My heart dropped into my stomach, and my hands clenched into fists. I could barely process what I was reading. The message was so intimate, so personal, so wrong. It was a side of Eliza I had never seen, a side I didn't even know existed. Was this who she really was? Was this what she had been hiding from me all this time? I looked up at her, but she still wouldn't meet my eyes. Her lips were trembling, and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. She was trying to hide it, but I could see through the facade. She was scared. She knew I had seen the messages, and she knew I knew what they meant. "Eliza, tell me the truth," I said, my voice breaking now. "Who is he? What's going on? What have you been doing?" She hesitated for a long moment before finally speaking, her voice barely above a whisper. "His name is Nathan," she said, the words hanging heavy in the air. He's just someone I met at work. We've been talking for a while now, but it's nothing, James. Really, it's just a little harmless flirting. Nothing more." I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. A part of me wanted to believe her, to accept that it was just harmless flirting, that this wasn't as bad as it seemed. But another part of me, the part that had been listening to her words, the part that had seen the messages, knew this wasn't just some innocent chat. This wasn't harmless. This was real. She was emotionally invested in someone else. "I don't understand," I said, my voice strained. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you talk to me about it? We've always been open with each other, Eliza. Why keep it a secret?" She finally turned to face me, her eyes red and swollen with unshed tears. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said quietly. "I thought it was just a phase, a little distraction. But it's more than that now. Nathan, he makes me feel alive again, James. I haven't felt like myself in so long." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. It felt like my entire world was crashing down around me. I had always thought I knew her. We had been through so much together. But now, everything felt like a lie. "I don't know who you are anymore," I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of the words. "I thought you were happy. I thought we were happy." She shook her head, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I don't know if I am anymore. I don't know if I can keep pretending." And with those words, everything shifted. The trust we had built, the love we had shared. It all seemed to vanish in an instant. I had no idea how to fix it, or if it was even fixable. But one thing was certain. This was just the beginning of something I didn't know how to stop. The room felt smaller with each passing second. The silence between us grew thicker, heavier, like the weight of everything unsaid. Eliza was still sitting on the bed, her body stiff, her face a mask of regret and guilt. But there was something else in her eyes now. It wasn't just guilt. It was something darker. It was the look of someone who had already made a decision that I wasn't a part of. And that hurt more than anything. I stood up from the chair, my legs shaking slightly as I paced back and forth across the room. I needed space. I needed to think. But my thoughts were a chaotic whirlwind, too fast to keep up with. Nathan. Nathan. The name kept echoing in my mind like a drumbeat, each repetition making my blood run colder. How could she have kept this from me? How could she have been talking to him, texting him, flirting with him for who knows how long? And I had no clue. I thought we had an understanding, that we shared everything. But now, it felt like everything I knew about her was unraveling before my eyes. I looked back at her, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and hurt. "Is this why you've been distant lately?" I asked. "Is this why you've been pulling away from me? Because of him?" She didn't respond immediately, but I could see her eyes flickering with something. Guilt, fear, maybe even shame. But she didn't deny it. That was the worst part. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said, her voice weak, almost pleading. "I never thought I'd feel like this about him. But James, it's been hard. I've felt so alone for so long, even when you're here. And then Nathan came along, and it was like he actually saw me, you know? He made me feel special in a way that I hadn't felt in a long time." I took a step back, as though her words physically struck me. It felt like a punch to the gut. I had been right there, right beside her all this time, and she had felt alone. The irony of it hit me harder than anything else. We had shared so much, our dreams, our fears, our plans for the future, and now she was telling me that she had felt abandoned? How could I have missed this? How had I failed her so completely? "Alone," I whispered. "I've been here, Eliza. I've been trying. I've been trying so hard. But you've been slipping away from me, and I didn't even know why. I thought everything was fine. I thought we were okay." She shook her head, wiping her eyes. "I didn't know how to say it. How to tell you that I didn't feel loved. Not in the way I needed. I wanted you, but I needed more. I didn't want to hurt you, but I didn't know how else to get it. And Nathan, he was there. He listened to me, really listened, and it was so easy to get lost in it. I never planned for it to become what it did." I could feel the bile rising in my throat as the words sank in. She was talking about him like he was some kind of lifeline, and in some twisted way, maybe he had been. But that didn't make it any less painful. I had loved her, truly loved her, but now she was telling me that love wasn't enough. Not anymore. "Is this what you want, Eliza?" I asked, the words leaving my mouth before I even realized what I was saying. "Do you want him more than you want me? Is that what this is about?" Her eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw the truth. The raw, painful truth. She didn't have an answer. She didn't know. Or maybe she did, but she was too afraid to admit it. Her gaze wavered, and she swallowed hard, trying to find the words. But there was nothing she could say to make this better. There was nothing anyone could say. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what I want anymore. I'm so confused, James. I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't want any of this to happen." I turned away, the frustration and hurt building inside of me like an uncontrollable fire. I felt the weight of everything. Every moment we had spent together, every promise we had made, every plan we had talked about, crashing down on me all at once. It felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me, and I was falling fast, with no way to catch myself. I looked back at her one last time. "Do you love him?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Is that what this is? Love?" She closed her eyes, the silence between us stretching longer than it ever had before. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. "I don't know. Maybe I do. But maybe that doesn't matter anymore." Those words hit me harder than anything else she had said. "Maybe I do." That's all she could say. And in that moment, I knew. I knew that the woman I had thought I knew, the woman I had loved, had already made up her mind. She wasn't coming back to me. Not in the way I wanted. And the worst part was, I didn't know if I could blame her. The silence between us was unbearable. It hung in the room like thick, heavy smoke, smothering everything. I could barely breathe. Each breath a painful reminder that everything we had built, everything I thought we were, was slipping away, piece by piece. Eliza was still sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly together in her lap, her shoulders hunched as if she were trying to make herself smaller. I could see the tears staining her cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. She just let them fall, silently, like a slow, steady stream of regret. I wanted to comfort her. I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, that we could work through this, but I couldn't. The anger and betrayal swirling inside me were too overwhelming. How could I comfort her when she had already made her decision? How could I hold her when she had let someone else in, someone who wasn't me? I couldn't ignore the gut-wrenching feeling that she had already chosen him, and that there was nothing I could do to change that. The thought gnawed at me, a constant ache that wouldn't go away. I paced across the room, trying to find some semblance of control, but it was slipping further and further from my grasp. I needed answers, more than just her half-hearted admissions. I needed to know if I was truly losing her, or if there was something, anything, that we could salvage from the wreckage she had caused. Eliza, do you think I'm stupid? I finally asked, my voice sharp, biting through the thick silence. I didn't know why I asked it. Maybe I was trying to understand how she could do this to me, or maybe I just wanted to know if she felt any remorse for what she had done. But her eyes, those eyes that I had spent years loving, didn't meet mine. She just stared at the floor, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her shirt. I don't think you're stupid, she said quietly, almost too quietly. But I think I've been pretending. Pretending everything was fine, pretending that I was happy. And I wasn't. I haven't been for a while now. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say something? We could have worked through this together. We always have before. My voice was shaking now, the anger slowly turning into something else, something much deeper. It was betrayal, yes, but it was also confusion. How could she have kept all of this from me? How could she have been talking to someone else behind my back for months, and I hadn't seen it coming? She looked up at me then, her face a mixture of guilt and sorrow. But there was something else there too, something I hadn't expected. There was relief. Relief. Like the weight of keeping this secret was finally too much for her to bear, and now that I knew, it was like she could breathe again. I didn't want to hurt you, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I thought maybe if I just kept it to myself, if I could control it, I wouldn't have to ruin everything. But it wasn't fair to you. I know that now. I should have told you sooner. Her words cut deep, deeper than I was willing to admit. She didn't just make a mistake. She had chosen this. She had chosen to betray me, to betray the trust we had built over the years. And for what? A fleeting connection with someone else? Was I that easy to replace? I stood there, rooted to the spot, as the anger inside me grew, twisted into something far darker. So what now, Eliza? I demanded. What do we do now? Do you go to him? Do you leave me for him? Is that what you want? The words felt like acid on my tongue, burning as they left my mouth. The thought of her with him, the thought of her choosing him over me, was almost too much to bear. But she didn't answer right away. She just stared at me, like she was trying to read me, to figure out what I wanted to hear. But I didn't want her answers anymore. I wanted the truth. I don't know, she admitted, her voice breaking. I don't know what I want anymore. I don't know what's right. I don't even know who I am right now. That was the final blow. The final crack in everything I thought I knew about her, about us. She didn't know who she was anymore. What kind of answer was that? How could she expect me to stay when she didn't even know who she was without him? Without Nathan? I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I was done. Done with the games, done with the lies. She had already made up her mind, and I had been fooling myself by thinking I could fix it. There was no fixing this. Not now. I walked to the door, my hands gripping the frame, my knuckles white with the force of it. I couldn't look at her anymore. I couldn't look at the woman who had been my wife, the woman I had trusted with my heart, who now stood before me with nothing but broken promises and shattered trust. Eliza, I don't know what's going to happen now, I said, my voice low and steady, though I could feel the storm brewing inside me. But I can't do this. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. I don't even know who you are anymore. And with that, I left. I left the apartment, left the woman I had loved, left the life I had thought we were building. I didn't know where I was going. only that I couldn't stay there any longer. I needed space. I needed time. And I needed to figure out how to move on from the woman who had already moved on from me. The night felt endless as I wandered aimlessly, the cold air biting at my skin, but it did nothing to numb the pain swirling inside me. I didn't know where I was going, didn't care. All I could think about was her, Eliza. How had it come to this? How had everything we built been so easily shattered? I couldn't stop replaying her words over and over again in my mind. I haven't been happy for a while. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could control it. Each phrase echoed in my head, mocking me. How long had she been feeling like this? How long had I been so blind? I had been there, trying so hard to make our marriage work, to make her happy, and yet I wasn't enough. It was like I had failed in the most fundamental way, and now I was left with nothing but the wreckage of what we used to be. I found myself walking down a quiet street, the city lights flickering like distant stars. I didn't know where I was going, but something kept pushing me forward, as if the motion might make the pain a little easier to bear. The night felt surreal, like I was in a dream, a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, half expecting to see a message from Eliza, maybe a desperate apology or an explanation, but it wasn't her. It was a message from an unknown number, and my heart skipped a beat as I read the words. I didn't want to be the one to tell you this, but you need to know. Eliza and Nathan, it's been more than just texting. I stopped in my tracks, the world around me going still, my breath catching in my throat. My fingers trembled as I read the message again, trying to make sense of what it meant. More than just texting? What did that even mean? My mind raced, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. I couldn't bear the thought of knowing more, but I couldn't stop myself from reading on. I don't know how long it's been going on, but it's been happening in secret. They've been seeing each other behind your back. I'm sorry, but you deserve the truth. The words felt like a slap to the face, each sentence cutting deeper than the last. Eliza, the woman I had trusted with everything, had crossed a line I never thought possible. Not just texting, seeing each other. I felt sick, dizzy, as if the ground beneath me had vanished. I stood there, frozen in place, as the weight of the message sank in. Nathan wasn't just some flirtatious coworker. He wasn't just someone she had been texting for a little attention. He had been a part of her life in ways I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I thought I had known everything about her. Our late-night talks, the way she would curl up next to me on the couch, the way she smiled when we talked about our future. But now, I felt like a stranger to her. Like I had been living in some false reality where she was still the person I thought I knew. But she wasn't, and I wasn't sure if she ever had been. I needed answers. I needed to confront her, to demand the truth straight from her lips. I didn't care how painful it was anymore. But as I stood there, staring at the message in my hand, I realized something. The truth didn't matter anymore. Nothing mattered anymore. The person I loved, the person I thought I knew, she was gone. All that was left was the aftermath. I knew I had to go back. I had to face her, even if it was the last thing I wanted to do. But as I turned around, heading back to the apartment, a strange sense of finality settled over me. No matter what happened next, it would never be the same. I couldn't unlearn what I had just found out. I couldn't unsee the reality of her betrayal. By the time I got back to the apartment, the sky had shifted from the deep blue of night to the pale gray of early morning. It felt like the world had been turned upside down, like everything I had built with Eliza had crumbled in an instant. I stood outside the door for a moment, hesitating. I didn't know if I was ready for what awaited me on the other side. But I couldn't keep running. Not anymore. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. The lights were off, and I could hear the soft sound of her breathing from the bedroom. She was still awake, or maybe she had never gone to sleep. I stepped into the living room, my footsteps muffled on the carpet. I didn't know what to say, didn't know how to begin. Everything felt like a blur, my thoughts, my emotions, the anger and hurt swirling together in a storm that I didn't know how to navigate. Eliza, I said, my voice hoarse, barely above a whisper. She didn't respond at first. There was a long pause before she finally spoke, her voice trembling with uncertainty. James, I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't want to hurt you, but I knew I couldn't keep lying to you. I never meant for it to go this far. I didn't trust myself to speak. I didn't trust my voice not to break, not to betray the pain that was tearing me apart from the inside out. But I had to know. I had to hear it from her. I walked over to where she was sitting on the bed, looking small and fragile in the dim light, and I asked the question I knew I had to ask. How long, Eliza? How long has this been going on? Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, I saw her completely unravel. She looked broken, defeated, and I couldn't decide if I felt sorry for her or angry at her. Maybe both. Since the beginning of summer, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. It's been happening for months, James. And I'm so sorry. Months. The word hung in the air, suffocating me. Everything I had believed, everything I had trusted, was built on a lie. She had been seeing him behind my back for months, and I hadn't seen a thing. I had been so blind. My chest tightened as I tried to process the words. There was no going back from this. There was no fixing what had been broken. Eliza, I don't know who you are anymore, I said, my voice barely a whisper. The truth settled in, cold and final. I don't know who we are anymore. I could feel my legs grow weak as I sat down beside her, my body still reeling from the shock of everything I had just learned. Eliza was sitting next to me, her back stiff and her eyes filled with tears. The room was heavy with silence, the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. I didn't know what to do with myself anymore. Everything I thought I understood about love, about trust, had been ripped away in a matter of hours. I had spent so many years believing that Eliza was my person, the one I could always count on. But now, with her confession hanging in the air between us, I realized how fragile everything had been. I didn't know how long we sat there in silence. The minutes stretched on, and every second felt like an eternity. My mind was a tornado of thoughts, questions I didn't want to ask, and emotions I couldn't even begin to process. My stomach churned with a sickening mix of anger, disbelief, and pain. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it, how I hadn't noticed the signs. But I didn't have the answers. I just kept coming back to one harsh truth. She had lied to me. I thought I knew you, Eliza, I finally said, my voice breaking slightly. The words tasted bitter, like something I hadn't meant to say but couldn't stop. I thought I knew everything about you. And now I don't know who you are anymore. Her eyes filled with more tears as she turned towards me, her face pale and strained with guilt. She opened her mouth, like she was about to say something, but no words came. She was struggling to find the right thing to say, but there was nothing she could say that would make this better. Nothing she could say that would undo the betrayal. I never wanted to hurt you, she said finally, her voice weak, barely above a whisper. I thought I could control it. I thought maybe it was just a phase, something that would pass. But I don't know how it got to this point. I don't know how I let it go this far. I could see the pain in her eyes, but it didn't matter. The damage was already done. She had been emotionally involved with someone else for months, and all the apologies in the world couldn't undo that. I felt like I was drowning in her regret, in her hollow apologies, but none of it mattered anymore. How long were you planning on keeping this secret? I asked, my voice sharp with the hurt I could no longer hide. How long did you think you could get away with it, Eliza? Did you honestly think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't feel the distance growing between us? She flinched at the accusation, but she didn't deny it. She knew I was right. She had kept it all from me. She had been living a double life, and I had been none the wiser. The thought made me sick to my stomach, and the guilt I felt, guilt for not seeing it, for not being enough, was almost too much to bear. I was so scared, she said quietly, her voice trembling. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know how to face what I had done. I knew I was wrong. I knew I was hurting you, but I couldn't stop myself. And now I don't know how to fix any of this. Her voice broke at the end, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then the weight of everything hit me again. The promises we had made, the life we had built, all of it, shattered by a few months of deceit. She had been seeing Nathan behind my back. She had been texting him, meeting him, allowing him to occupy a place in her life that should have been mine. And she was sitting here now, crying, apologizing as if that would fix anything. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said again, this time more firmly. My voice was steady, but inside, I felt like I was being torn apart. You're not the person I married. You're not the person I thought I knew. She opened her mouth, like she was going to argue, to tell me that she was still the same person, but I could see the doubt in her eyes. The truth was already there, written on her face. She had changed. Somewhere along the way, she had become someone else. Someone I didn't recognize. I'm sorry, she said again, but the words felt empty now. I never wanted to lose you. I never thought it would come to this. I was just so lost. And then Nathan made me feel seen again. He made me feel like I mattered. My chest tightened at the words. So that's it. You felt seen by him. You felt like you mattered to him. But what about me? What about the years we spent together? What about the life we built? Her eyes filled with more tears as she reached out to touch my arm. But I pulled away, not wanting any more of her comfort, not wanting anything from her. I didn't want her touch. I didn't want her words. I just wanted the truth. And now that I had it, I wasn't sure I could live with it. I don't know how we fix this, she said, her voice cracking. I don't know how to make it right. I don't even know if I want to make it right. Her honesty was like a knife to the heart. I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me, suffocating me. She didn't know if she wanted to fix it. She didn't know if she wanted to fix us. That was the final confirmation I needed. You've already made your choice, haven't you? I said, the realization finally hitting me full force. You've already chosen him, Eliza. You've been choosing him for months. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was written all over her face. And in that moment, I knew. I knew that whatever happened next, we were done. There was no going back. I need to leave, I said, my voice cold, devoid of any emotion. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't say anything more. I stood up and walked out of the room, out of the apartment, and into the cold, empty night. And for the first time in years, I felt truly alone. The cold air hit me like a slap to the face as I stepped outside, but it didn't do anything to numb the ache that had taken root in my chest. I stood on the sidewalk for what felt like an eternity, staring at the distant glow of streetlights, the hum of the city all around me, yet it felt like I was in a world of my own. I wasn't sure where I was going, but the numbness inside me was like an overwhelming tide, pushing me forward with no clear destination in mind. It felt unreal, like I was living someone else's life, a life I didn't recognize. How could everything I thought I knew collapse so quickly? Eliza, the woman I loved, had become a stranger, someone whose actions I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I thought we had something solid, something unbreakable, but now it was all just a facade. She wasn't the person I thought she was. The betrayal stung, but it was more than that. It was the loss of trust, the sense that everything I had worked so hard to build had crumbled overnight. And the worst part was, I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out, half expecting it to be another message from Eliza. I knew she would try to reach me. She would apologize again, maybe beg me to come back, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want any more empty words. But it wasn't her. It was a text from an unknown number, a number that I didn't recognize. I opened the message with a mixture of dread and curiosity. I know you're probably furious with her right now, but you need to understand something. Nathan isn't the only one. My stomach dropped. What does that mean? My fingers trembled as I read the rest of the message. There's someone else, someone you don't know about. It's not just Nathan. If you want to know the whole truth, you need to wake up. She's been hiding more than you think. I'll be here if you need answers. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. Not just Nathan. Who else? My mind was spinning, the confusion and betrayal already too much to bear. And now there was more? Was this some kind of sick joke? Or was it someone else who had been keeping tabs on Eliza, watching her destruction unfold from the sidelines? I stared at the phone screen, my mind racing. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. But the message felt too real, too precise to be ignored. Someone else? How many people had she been lying to me about? I felt my chest tighten, and the air suddenly felt too thick to breathe. The betrayal was no longer just from Eliza. Someone else had been watching, someone who knew everything. I couldn't just keep walking around in the dark. I needed to know what was going on. Without thinking, I began to walk, my steps quick and unsteady, as if my feet were leading me somewhere I wasn't sure I was ready to go. I needed answers. I couldn't stand the not knowing. It wasn't until I found myself standing outside a small, rundown cafe that I realized I had no idea why I was there. My eyes scanned the empty street as if I was looking for something, someone, anything to make sense of the mess that had been made of my life. But there was nothing, just the stillness of the night, the cool breeze brushing against my skin. I didn't even know why I had left the apartment. What was I hoping to find? Was I hoping to run into someone who could give me the answers I was searching for? Or was I just trying to outrun the pain that had been following me all night? I felt the weight of the phone in my hand again and checked the message once more. If you want answers, You'll need to meet me. I'll be at the cafe tomorrow at 3 p.m. It's the only place you'll get the full story. I wasn't sure what to make of it. It could be a trap. Maybe Eliza's friend trying to stir the pot even more. But I couldn't ignore it. I had to know. If there was more to the story, I couldn't let it linger. The thought of her keeping more secrets from me, of hiding more lies, was too much. I spent the rest of the night walking. Just walking. My thoughts a chaotic blur as I processed everything. Eliza had betrayed me. I had known that much. But now it seemed like the entire foundation of our relationship was built on a lie. But what if this other person, whoever they were, was telling the truth? What if there was something more, something darker, that Eliza hadn't told me? By the time I made my way back to the apartment, the sky was beginning to lighten, the first traces of dawn breaking through the horizon. I stood outside the door, my hand hovering over the doorknob. A part of me wanted to go inside, to confront her, to demand the truth right then and there. But another part of me, the part that was shattered and broken, knew I couldn't do it just yet. I had already given so much of myself to her. But she had already taken it all, hadn't she? I walked away. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by just sitting around. Not anymore. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. I had to see it through. The next day felt like it stretched on for an eternity. I barely slept the night before, the events of the last few days constantly replaying in my mind like a never-ending reel of broken memories. But no matter how much I wanted to crawl into bed and shut the world out, I knew I had to face it. I had to find out the truth, whatever it was. I couldn't keep living in the shadows, wondering what else was hiding behind the curtain of Eliza's secrets. I found myself pacing in front of the cafe long before the clock struck 3. I didn't know why I was there early. Maybe I was trying to psyche myself up for whatever this was going to be. Maybe I was hoping for some kind of resolution, some kind of clarity. Whatever it was, I felt a sense of nervous anticipation hanging in the air, almost like I was waiting for my life to change in that very moment. At exactly 3 p.m., a woman stepped into the cafe. She was tall, with long brown hair and a quiet intensity about her that immediately caught my attention. She walked toward me, her eyes locking onto mine, and I knew immediately that she wasn't someone I had ever seen before. "You must be James," she said, her voice calm and composed, but there was an underlying sense of urgency. "I'm Sophie." Sophie. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. She must have sensed my confusion because she quickly added, "I'm Eliza's co-worker. We've met once or twice, but we don't know each other well." I didn't know what to say. I had expected someone more dramatic, I guess. Someone who would walk in with all the answers. Someone who would give me the dirt on Eliza's betrayal and leave me with more anger to fuel my rage. But Sophie just sat across from me, her gaze steady, waiting for me to ask the questions. "Why are you doing this?" I finally asked, my voice shaky, the weight of everything I'd learned crashing down on me all over again. "Why tell me all this? What's the point?" Sophie took a breath, her expression softening. "I'm telling you because you deserve the truth, James. But it's not the truth you think it is." I stared at her, confused. "What does that mean?" "You've been led to believe that Nathan was the main issue," she said, her eyes never leaving mine. "But the truth is more complicated than that. Eliza has made mistakes, yes, but she's not the person you think she is. She didn't want to hurt you, and for what it's worth, she has been deeply conflicted about everything. She made some bad decisions, but it wasn't what it seemed." I leaned forward, barely able to process what she was saying. "What do you mean? How can this be anything but what it seems? She's been lying to me. We've been lying to each other. How is that not a betrayal?" Sophie sighed, her hands resting lightly on the table. "I understand why you feel that way. I really do. But Eliza never meant to hurt you. And the reason she's been distant is because she's been dealing with something personal. Something from her past that she never told you about. It's not Nathan. It's something deeper, something she didn't know how to face until now." I couldn't breathe. "You're telling me this whole thing wasn't just about Nathan?" I asked, almost incredulously. "What are you saying?" Sophie gave me a small, understanding smile. "She's been going through a lot, James. More than she could handle. When Nathan came into the picture, it wasn't about falling for him. It was about her trying to fill a void that had nothing to do with you. She's been dealing with her own fears, her own doubts about who she is. And she felt like she couldn't share that with you. She's afraid of losing you." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't realized how much Eliza had been carrying on her own. It was hard to understand at first, the idea that her actions had been born out of her own struggles rather than malice. But hearing it from Sophie made me see it from a different angle. Maybe this wasn't about me at all. Maybe I had been so consumed by my own hurt that I hadn't seen what she was going through. I don't know what to do with all this, I whispered. Sophie's eyes softened as she reached out and gently placed her hand on mine. You don't have to do anything right now, but you deserve the chance to talk to her. Eliza wants to make things right, James. She's just afraid you won't want to hear it. I felt a knot in my stomach. This was more than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just the betrayal of infidelity. It was a deeper pain, a cry for help that had been buried beneath layers of fear and insecurity. I need to talk to her, I said finally, standing up, my voice steadier now. I need to hear her side. I need to know if we can fix this. I have to try. Sophie gave me a small, knowing smile. That's all you can do. The rest is up to both of you. I left the cafe with a sense of purpose, a quiet determination building in my chest. Maybe this wasn't the end of everything. Maybe it was the beginning of something new. When I arrived back at the apartment, Eliza was sitting on the couch, her face etched with worry. When she saw me, she stood up quickly, her eyes wide with uncertainty. James, Before she could say anything else, I spoke, my voice calm but firm. I'm not sure where we go from here. But I'm willing to listen, Eliza. I'm willing to hear you out. But you have to be honest with me. No more lies, no more running away. If we're going to move forward, we have to do it together. Only then can we rebuild what we've lost. She looked at me, relief flooding her face as she stepped toward me. I never meant to hurt you, James. I swear I didn't. And I want to fix this. I don't want to lose you. And for the first time in days, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe we weren't completely broken. Maybe we could rebuild, brick by brick. Maybe, just maybe, we had a chance.